Hello and welcome there to another episode of the Cliff Notes podcast, where we ask a leader and find their way. Today I've been joined by Mick Tilley, director and co-founder of Tried&True, not your grandma's agency, based up in Yorkshire and Harrogate, and they've also got offices down in London. I'm Tristan Bailey and I want to welcome Mick to the show. How are you doing today, Mick?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's nice to have the sun out and getting through this sort of pandemic season, back into some more form of social life.
Yeah, the sun makes a difference, doesn't it?
It does.
Everyone here seems to be just that notch happier now that the sun's come out and they're a little less cold.
Warms the soul as well as the extremities. We've been having a conversation the other week about sort of diversity and taking on different people in the workplace and working with your team at the office. Maybe you can just give us a little bit of background as to how your own business is set up.
So I've worked in the market and PR industry for, over a decade now. And about sort of coming up 2 years ago, we started making plans to launch our own agency. I think really the whole kind of driving force behind even wanting to do that in the first place was frustrations really about the state of the industry. Mainly, not so much kind of the work that was being done for clients and things like that, but more around actually how talent was being treated within our industry by employers. And we're really struggling to get the best out of people. A lot of the places that I'd worked previously were large agencies, 200 plus staff, who obviously with that comes a level of rigidity in terms of processes and things. And I just think that given that we work in a creative industry and some of the types of people within that, a lot of people on the spectrum, for example, we certainly index higher in people on the spectrum than many other industries, yet there wasn't really that kind of consideration for how you get the best out of that talent. A lot of agencies would buy a pool table, buy some bean bags, throw them in the corner and say that they were a new age employer, when in reality, as the last 12 months has shown us, actually there are so many better ways of doing things. So over the last 12 months, we've obviously having remote work enforced on us. The consensus seems to be that kind of post-pandemic, there will certainly be a large part for remote working still to play within businesses that just would have never considered it before. So that was kind of where we were at. We were frustrated. And I know that from personal experience. I am on the spectrum, so I have Asperger's. And I just know that the way that things were set up wasn't getting the best out of me and that there were better ways to do things. So we set about creating Tried&True, me and my other director, Kirsty. And from day one, that's been the mission statement really, is that we want to do good work for clients and create great jobs for people within our industry.
That sounds very good. So was this feeling that you'd had as in a leadership position before, that you wanted to change things that you weren't able? Or was this as an employee that you felt the environment could be better?
I think it was a consistent feeling throughout my early career as an employee. Yeah, I think if we went back and interviewed previous employers of mine, they would probably say that I was a talent, but that I was disruptive, probably. I have always just tried to seek out better ways of doing things and not been shy on telling senior management that there were better ways to do things. But again, it was always a frustration that never seemed to go anywhere. And then moving further on in my career, when I was sat in senior roles, similarly, actually trying to make that change, it almost gave me an empathy towards my previous employers as to how difficult it can be to implement change in big agencies and big companies that have set ways of doing things. And I think that was ultimately what led me to the only way that this is going to happen is if I have a blank sheet of paper and I have control over that. And so that's why we started Tried&True. And from day one, with that mindset of there will be plenty of companies that say it, but we put our people before profit. And I think in the long term, that kind of mindset leads to a healthy profit anyway. And we're doing very well financially off the back of that because we just reduce so many headaches in other areas. So we've been running, as I say, about 2 years since we started on the business, and we haven't had a single member of staff that we've hired today to actually leave the business. Now, obviously, we're kind of still in our infancy and there's plenty of time for that to happen. But I genuinely do believe that our staff wouldn't consider moving on as it currently stands because of the setup that we have and how much they enjoy their day-to-day job. So we have a lot of initiatives in place that make us an attractive employer. But I think the key thing is that we really listen. I think it would have been foolish for me to think I'm going to start an agency that is about the people and then think, okay, I have all the answers to that, because obviously that's not the case and things are different for everyone. And so constantly developing and evolving what we offer for our staff in terms of training, development, benefits is really important, and doing it at an individual level as well. So what's right for one person isn't necessarily right for the next. There are problems that causes. If we are trying to create a bespoke working situation for each employee, then that requires time and it requires effort on our part. But the time and effort that we put into that is tiny compared to the time and effort had to put in previous roles for replacing staff that have left and constantly recruiting the churn of staff, because we work in an industry where that is quite naturally high, the churn. So yeah, I think to date, I'm very happy with the decisions we made on that front.
And I mean, just with the focus therefore on hiring, have you had to work in a different way than maybe other business would be, or have you adapted that process?
I think that from the outset, we look for something different than the typical recruitment process. We work in an industry where undoubtedly your staff are the most important asset to your business. So we're not selling a physical product. We're selling their time essentially to work for a client. And so I think that's often overlooked even by agency leaders in the industry as to how important that is. And so obviously I'm not going to name names and things like that, but previous employers of mine, for example, within the last 5 years, I can think of teams within those companies that had churned almost 100% of the staff over the past 5 years. And so the argument would be, is that even the same agency? They'll use the same case studies and things like that, but the reality is that is a totally different agency, and the reputation that they had 5 years ago can't necessarily be kind of leaned upon. And so I think that our recruitment policy is very much about the person rather than previous experience and degrees and things like that. The very first thing we do is just get to know what a person is like, what their personality is. I think that I would always put strong personality, positivity, creativity over experience in a particular task or role, because ultimately I can teach intelligent people how to do the job. But what you can't teach is personality, is creativity and positivity and the things that brings. To answer the question, in terms of actually our recruitment and how we do things differently, yeah, it's just that initial, how do we actually bring in applicants? So we're very clear in our recruitment adverts and things like that experience is nice, but really, do you tick these boxes? Are you a creative person? Are you an intelligent person? Are you a friendly person? And if they are, then I'll give them the time of day to come in for a chat or a Zoom or whatever. Because over the past 10 years, I've had hundreds of people work in teams that I've managed. So I know the type of people that can do the job well. And I know that we can train them to do it. So it's definitely more about personality.
And then with carrying that on, is it more about the people and the people processes, or is it the work environment too and the sort of physical spaces that you've had, and then maybe even how they've had to change with the pandemic and sort of working from home, that could be lessons or learnings for other people?
Pre-pandemic, our approach was always that remote working was entirely flexible. So unless a staff member needed to be in a particular place for a meeting with clients or training session or something like that, then they were flexible to work from wherever they wanted to work. And I think that kind of stems from my general approach, which is that I don't pay people for their time. I pay them to do a job. And if their job is done and done on time and done to the standard we need it to be, then it's really on the employee to figure out what's the best way to achieve that whilst striking a strong work-life balance. So if they need a morning off for something, whether it be something important, caring for a family member, or something less important in terms of they need to go shopping, something they want is released, a new pair of trainers, whatever it would be, and they need to go at a certain time, fine, do it. If the work's done, I'm not really interested what time you were sat down at your laptop doing it, as long as it's done. And we have that approach to annual leave as well. So obviously we give everyone the statutory annual leave and encourage them to take at least that. But again, if they need more time off or they want more time off and they can put in the extra effort in the weeks leading up or things like that, then we essentially have an unlimited holiday policy. In terms of working space, yeah, I think that's really important to getting the best out of people when they are in the office. I think that's one thing that the entire agency does, the entire industry, does really well, is building office spaces that are kind of conducive to doing good work. When you're in a creative setting, that can be creative industry, that can be really important. That does differ across different teams within an agency like ours. So I think if you take developers, for example, on average, what I've found is that they aren't particularly interested in being in an office with pool tables and all of that. They would much rather be sat in a home office, headphones on, cracking on with coding. Going back to what I was saying earlier at the start about how the industry indexes highly in people on the spectrum and things like that, is that also there's an expectation that our industry is full of extroverts, but in reality, many developers, designers, many creative people across the board are very introverted people and don't want that constant, let's do something fun and social. And that was something that I found in agency life, is that when it came to things like the benefits they would sell as employers, they talked a lot about things like social gatherings and free drinks on Fridays and stuff like that. And I haven't really, I think I was probably 2 years since I last had a drink, and not for any reason other than it's not really something that I do. And social situations not for me as somebody with Asperger's on the spectrum. Yet the whole agency's kind of, I say benefits, it's not really a benefit, but their whole kind of unique selling point to potential employees was built around social things. Again, it's understanding like what are all of those different elements and what is going to bring the best out of people. Going back to what I was saying earlier, that is why we spend so much time thinking about work and culture, is how do we get the best out of a person? And so that's never one answer. And that's where really the frustrations with previous employers and things like that came in, was they were potentially too big to make the changes. They were already far down a path that would be difficult and expensive to come out of. And for that reason, I know I'm never going to be a 200-man agency, purely because it would potentially go the same way. And really, it's it's genuinely important to us that we continue to give people a great place to work. That makes me happier than anything else. Our revenue is strong. Our profit margin is strong. It's strong enough for me to be actually genuinely happy with making great jobs for people. Let me rephrase that. We do really well. We had a great first year. We're having a great second year. I'd be very surprised if we don't hit the £1 million revenue mark in year 2, which to say that we founded with 2 of us without just our savings accounts, I think is pretty strong. And our profit margin is healthy to the point that being naturally not greedy people, our main focus isn't growing that at the moment. It is really about creating great jobs that people are happy to wake up on a Monday morning and come to, or go into their home office to.
No, I think it sounds really positive, and to keep the people working, and the retention obviously saves you time and money of having to keep hiring and being uncertain with people's futures.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key. It's not all wishy-washy, new age stuff in terms of our objective. Obviously, it's underpinned by wanting to build a great agency and grow the agency. And I think it's more that we have a different mindset as to how we achieve that. And I think that one of the big problems, well, in fact, not one of, the biggest problem that I had as a senior member of agencies throughout the years was losing good staff and trying hard to replace them, or finding it hard to replace them. And that key, our industry in particular, it was staff retention. That would change the game.
Just then, with filling out the sort of spectrum of roles that must be required for running your business, do you need to give people more space, or do you construct the roles differently for, say, customer-facing roles versus sort of more the doing and the production and the creative roles? Do you have to find that right balance, or just clients are they're understanding with the way that the relationship might work differently in being in meetings, being in presentations and things?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously our business is servicing clients, and so we have meetings every day with clients, phone calls every day, Zooms and the like. And so we do need to strike that balance of how do we do the best work and get the best out of our staff whilst maintaining strong client relationships. And I think that, so to take it one level higher, my approach to building teams is that not everybody is great at everything, and that just because somebody doesn't tick certain boxes within a typical job description doesn't mean that they can't overcompensate in other areas. So for me, it's about building a team. So rather than bringing in, say, 10 people on the exact same job description, is how do I build a team of 10 people that give me the best? So some of that will require people that are strong with clients. Others may not need to ever see a client if we have that team in place. And I use this comparison a lot, not just in this scenario, but across the board. But I think about a football team. You don't just go out and look for 11 Cristiano Ronaldos, because you're going to be leaky at the back. And so you need to find strong defenders, a goalkeeper. You need the people to feed Cristiano. That's how I approach building my teams, is understanding, okay, well, what is the broad skill set that we need within let's say, an SEO department? We're going to need very technical people. We're going to need creative people to come up with content strategies. We're going to need analysts. And we're going to need at least one person within that team that can sit in front of a client and present all of that work being done and all of that information in a way that the client is going to understand, and build a good relationship with the client, because that can't be overlooked as well, is how important the client relationship is, not just from a work perspective, but hesitate to say at a personal level, but just in terms of the general vibe of the relationship, because clients will battle for you if things don't quite go to plan. And so you want that as well. So it's about building that holistic team that can deliver what we need. And that can be a risky approach in terms of, okay, well, what if we lose Cristiano? But again, why we spend so much time on staff retention and making sure people are happy. So that's kind of my approach to that. There are other teams where, so for example, developers, I will never make a developer go on a call with a client unless it's something that they've expressed a desire to do, because it's not really required. And so it's just about, coming back to that analogy of building the team.
And surely that's also been different with the pandemic situation of people can't be sharing the same space and supporting each other in a more of a physical space. If you're in a group situation, you can't sort of get that eye contact or that physical contact sort of thing of being near other people. Has that changed your business or personal focus during the pandemic?
No is the short answer. I'm proud of the fact that the things that have been forced on many businesses as a result of the pandemic weren't forced on us. We were set up for that because we're so flexible as an employer. As I say, remote working was encouraged even before COVID hit. And so that didn't necessarily change things for us. There are people that want to be in an office and want to see people. And so we still have our open space offices where people can come in and hot desk in a safe, secure way if they just want that bit of kind of human interaction. And so whilst obviously we've encouraged people to stay home, there's been that option for people that just, needed a break from home. Because I know I've got a 3-year-old and 2 1-year-old twins at home. It's just an absolute nightmare to try and get any work done at home. So we've had that throughout. And as I say, I think that we were set up for it, fortunately. Obviously, I wasn't preempting something like a pandemic. It just happened that our ways of working aligned with what needed to happen. And so we did quite well. Ultimately, I think that we're a marketing consultancy and agency across the board, but digital is the lion's share of our business. As much as the pandemic has had terrible impacts on so many industries, on so many others, like if you're an e-commerce retailer, then you've probably done really well. And I know that from how our clients have done. Other clients, so we have clients in travel where we've made adjustments to what we're doing for them and how we're doing it and what their payment schedules can be and things like that, just to try and get them through the back end. So we've taken a hit on some of those, but we've done that proactively more than anything. We've had a good year, and so we wanted to make that offer to clients that needed it rather than it being a necessity of them forcing it on us. I almost kind of feel embarrassed when I get asked questions around it, guilty almost, that actually we've had a really good year. I just don't like gloating about it too much, given that so many others haven't.
In your own role to support the business running, how do you best use your focus?
Going back to that idea of building a team, me and my business partner, Kirsty, we're like polar opposites. So you would never believe that we would even speak to each other in a social setting or anything like that. We're completely different people. And that's purposeful in terms of why we work together, because we fill each other's gaps. So I am the big picture person. I have a lot of ideas and I have a lot of goals and objectives for the agency. And Kirsty is a get shit done person, to be direct about it. She takes those ideas and she makes them operational. She implements them within the agency. She implements processes with clients and so on. And I focus really on what is the big picture, where do we want to be, and a lot of time with clients as well. If I had to narrow down the strongest things I bring to the partnership, it is that kind of relationship building and making sure everyone's happy, making sure they're happy with the work and just how things are going. And so I focus on those relationships really, while Kirsty and the rest of the team are getting the work done for clients.
I think that's a positive step, and that's the more leadership pieces, isn't it? It's sort of stepping out the way that work can get done, but also facilitating those people to do even better or their best piece and just move those obstacles out of the way.
Yeah, that's it entirely.
What sort of business challenges do you think you and your industry face in the next sort of 3 years, or for their customers to keep them happy?
There will be challenges coming from every angle, unfortunately. Over the past year or two in particular, there's been a lot of changes around things like GDPR and just the general sentiment towards data sharing, cookies, and things like that. And as a digital agency, see, we've been highly reliant on having access to data, both when we're building campaigns and when we're analysing data and things like that. And there are some significant changes happening over the course of 2021 that will mean that we have to change a lot of things. So that will be an interesting challenge, but one that I back. I'm all for data privacy. And so, yeah, it's not a challenge that I resent us coming up against. Ever-changing client landscape and what they want and how they want it. I think there are evolving ways of working internally for clients means that we have to shift a lot of what we do. The SEO agencies I've worked at in the past and the way that they're set up to essentially take a retainer invoice for a client to go away and run their whole SEO strategy, whereas many more parts of that now are being done by in-house teams, and it moves agencies away from being kind of a strategic partner to more of a tactical execution hub, with the strategy being led internally. So again, it's what knock-on impact does that have to our staffing levels in different areas and skill sets? And the big one, obviously, will be the fallout from COVID. Whilst we've been lucky to date, ultimately, once the dust settles and people are looking at what longer-term marketing budgets and things like that look like, that's going to have I would say that's an inevitable challenge for agencies, is a decline in budgets. Multiple angles, but keeps it all interesting.
Yeah, certainly working with those customers, but it's their customers' customers or their customers' suppliers that we see most likely to see the fallout from, say, when furlough schemes end or economies do pick up or don't pick up in different industries. So especially in travel and flight, the airplane maintenance of the airplane business or the other different car travel or the other different areas do not pick up, then working manufacturing, it will see knock-ons or mergers or acquisitions or those pieces. And so you have to be a bit more aware of that market space or what's happening in a wider field rather than just one step away connections that you have.
Absolutely. I mean, that's true of agencies across the board, really, isn't it? If agencies have high amount of retail clients, then obviously they're going to have had a massive knock-on effect when it comes from the ground up, doesn't it? It's going to be interesting, but as I say, we can just take it how it comes.
You're creative people. There's going to be a creative solution. Do you have any favourite tools or favourite book that you've been reading at the moment that other people might like to share and enjoy?
When it comes to reading in particular, I try to steer clear of anything work-based because it's one of the few times that I actually get to just have a bit of downtime between running a business and 3 young children. But in terms of tools, I like to spend time on Google Trends. So it's really interesting, but can also be a really useful tool to understand, as you were just saying, like what's going on in the wider sphere and things like that. So I like to do a lot of write-ups on what is occurring in different industries and things like that. It's things like that. I'm a bit of a data nerd, so I enjoy things like Google Trends.
And the fun closer is if we were to give you or encourage you to even get out your own superhero costume, because I'm sure you are a superhero in your own world. What 2 things would you grab to come out on top and help your customers achieve more?
What 2 things would I grab?
You're going to give your customers a superhero ending to their show, or maybe they're the superhero in your story.
My superheroes here are definitely my management team. So I, not consciously, But over the course of the business, I've built up a management team comprised entirely of women who are, frankly, far better at what they do than I am. And they pretty much carry me every day. So if I was going to grab anyone, it would be my management team, I think.
It shows how much of a close family, a close team you are that work together like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important from the top down, teamwork, and feeling like you're in it together, particularly over the last year. I think that's true of everyone. Yeah, and I guess like in terms of an end and soundbite, for me, it's remember that your staff are humans, your clients are humans, that work and life and all of that don't need to have this huge big divide where all of a sudden everything's very professional, very corporate, we've got to document all of this and all of that. Just be a human being, just be kind to people. And ultimately, you're going to have a far better culture. You're going to hold on to your staff. And if you hold on to your best staff, then you'll continue to do good work. Continue to do good work, and your clients will renew their contracts.
I think that's a good way to close out and keep those relationships open and positive. Thanks for being able to join us today, Mick. What's the best way of getting in contact with yourselves?
LinkedIn, Mick Tilley, or the website is TriedTrue.com. That's the agency website. Anyone can email me directly, mick@TriedTrue.com. Yeah, and I'm always open to conversation from people in the industry, from potential clients, obviously, or people looking to get into the industry. We've actually just had approval through from the government for a bunch of the Kickstarter jobs, and we're working with Marketing College in Leeds, but they have centres across the country to develop a training scheme for anybody that comes on with us through the Kickstarter scheme. So if there's young people out there who are struggling to find work at the moment, then I'd encourage them to get in touch.
I mean, just because we didn't dive into sort of more on what is produced out of the business, we were focusing around people and that sort of warm and inclusive nature. I mean, what does a sort of client or an industry that's best fit for you if people were wanting to reach out?
Yeah, we work across most industries. Anything from construction through to fashion. A lot of my personal experience over the last 10 years has been fashion and travel and general e-commerce retail. We work across the board, really. We're currently looking for a charity partner who we would be looking to work on their market on a pro bono basis. So if there are any charities out there that want to get in touch as well, we're currently looking for a partner. We work with clients right from local businesses through to international brands, kind of household names. So sports is another big one for us. We work with a lot of clients in the sports space, and we've just acquired an executive box at the Stadium of Light in Sunderland. So if there are any potential clients who are Sunderland fans, then maybe I can get you a seat.
Sounds good. So it's been really great talking with you today and picking up on your experience and the way that you and your team have been working together. Thank you very much for joining us again today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Thanks for joining us today again on the Cliff Notes podcast. We've enjoyed your company, and if you want to get in touch with myself or the guest, the details will all be in the show notes at the website cliffnotespodcast.com, and you can message us there if you have got any questions for myself or the guest, or over on Twitter or LinkedIn. We're popular and like to hang out there and chat with people. So get in contact, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.